Hello everyone, welcome back to the Queendom. I'm delighted to be here again, and this time I'm going to start a new series in which I answer specific questions that I receive from those of you that either contact me on social media or just come to have coaching sessions with me. And today we're talking about breakups and why is it so difficult for us to let go of an ex. Well, there's a couple of reasons why this is one of the most difficult things that we have to go through in life, and I'm sure everyone out there will remember one particular ex, maybe the one who got away, or maybe one that we will always remember as the person who broke our heart the most. Of course, every breakup is difficult. Every breakup really means that we have to learn a certain lesson. But for some people, and in certain cases, one particular person becomes this really the object of adoration, someone that we absolutely cannot let go of. And we really don't know how to handle that situation and what can we really do. Well, I think if we understand the whole psychology of it and the biology of love, we will find it much easier to manage this huge traumatic change that is happening in our life when a partner that we're in love with, someone that we actually believe is the one, no longer wants to be with us. And the first part of it is essentially to understand that love and attachment are functioning exactly like a drug. So when we can't let go of someone in our life is really because we are addicted to that thought, to the presence of that person in our life. And more particularly, we are addicted to the pleasure that we are experiencing when we think of that person. Now, I mentioned in previous videos that I don't believe we fall in love with people. I believe we fall in love with the fantasy that we create of a relationship, and we somehow force fit a particular person into that sort of gap of Prince Charming or Princess Charming, whatever it is that we're looking for. And in this fantasy life that we create in our mind, we believe that this person is the one. Now, what does it mean to choose someone, and what does it mean to be chosen? Well, I think psychologically, because we are interdependent beings and we don't like to be on our own, the fact that someone chooses us, the fact that someone falls in love with us and wants to spend time with us and makes us promises of living happily ever after and so on, we see this as a confirmation that we matter. Because someone chooses me, it means I'm worth something. Because someone chooses me, because this person decides to love me, it means that I am valuable, that I matter, that I'm important, and that I am a good person, because who would choose someone who's not a good person, right? However, if we lose that person, or if that person who chose us decides to go a different way and not really sticks around to that choice that they've made, we start seeing that as the ultimate rejection. Because if I'm not chosen by this person, what am I? If this person doesn't like me, does it make me a bad person? Is there something else that keeps us attached to that fantasy? Well, ultimately, all addictions, I was just watching a beautiful neuroscience podcast about addiction and pain and pleasure, is essentially directed by these two systems that we have in our brain, one of which is essentially the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of a feel-good factor, which obviously we know love is high on that scale. When we fall in love, we're euphoric. We feel that literally the world is our oyster, that we are the king and the queens of the world because this one person chose us. We really feel very, very special and very, very happy. And that happiness makes us want more and more and more of that love. Because of course, what would happen if we no longer loved? Well, we experience pain. And the way our body and our mind regulates this beautiful balance between seeking pleasure is by actually bringing us down a little bit. So every now and then when we experience these peaks of pleasure, we then actually feel a certain level of pain. And because that pain, that craving, that missing, that something that we used to have no longer being there actually motivates us to keep getting it again. So I'm sure you've been in a situation in which you liked someone, you've had a really intense conversation with them or really intense relationship with them, maybe you've dated them and it's been super euphoric and it's been super amazing and you've spent so much time talking to them all the time. But then you realize that every single time that you see them, the hit of pleasure is a little bit less. And then that pleasure is counterbalanced by this pain that you're feeling of not being with them. So in many cases, addiction is not as much pursuit of pleasure, but it's actually about filling that gap, bringing yourself back to the point of no pain. So it's not so much about being with that person because they give you this huge hit of dopamine, but it's because without them, you believe you are nothing. And that judgment that I'm nothing, that I'm unworthy, that I'm not important, that I don't matter to anyone makes us feel alone and terrible and rejected. And really is something that we cannot stop ourselves from feeling. So what do we do in that case? We think of something that made us happy in the past. So we bring up memories of the past. We start thinking about all those good times when that person loved us and they were there. And this is how we kept getting caught up in this chain of addiction. So I feel bad about myself because this person rejected me. So I'm going to maybe text them or stalk them on Instagram or on Facebook to see what they're up to. Well, the first thing that in therapy or in coaching we tell our clients is really to stop scratching that itch, because literally it feels like an itch. So if you've ever desperately wanted to talk to someone or to hear from someone that you are in love with and they no longer pay attention to you, or they ghosted you or something like that, you know that it literally feels like an itch you cannot scratch. And the only way you can change that is really by either remembering good times from the past and essentially, like I like to call it, make yourself bleed again, feel that happiness, but it always comes as a bittersweet memory because you know you can't have it anymore. You can't just reach out your hand and meet this person or kiss this person. So then we do the next best thing, which is we start talking or texting them, we start stalking them, we start checking their social media and so on. Unfortunately, this only supports this whole cycle of pleasure and pain. And the more we seek the pleasure of the memories, or the more we seek pleasure in those things that we had in the past, the more we realize that we're actually creating more and more pain for ourselves. So yes, I'm sure you understand that this is the reality of how our body works and how our mind works, and we keep trying to make ourselves feel better only to end up making ourselves feel much worse, because we know, objectively speaking, that this person has chosen to go another way. And when you actually see them happily dating someone else that is not you on social media, you're definitely not going to feel any better. So what's the answer? What's the solution? How can we break this? Well, the number one thing to do when you have an addiction is to literally stop exposing yourself to that particular stimulus. So in the case of love, it really means you have to stop contact with the other person. And yes, it's going to feel much worse, because being in that pain of not having the connection, of not remembering that person, of not being satisfied by their response, even if it is like angry responses, as sometimes I hear from some of my clients. If you've ever stalked anyone, or if you've ever tried to call someone when you are in a lot of pain or a lot of anger and they told you to F off and so on, you know that it's not pleasant, but the part of it, the connection that you make with it, still makes you feel good. So like all addiction, you will need at least 4 weeks of not getting in touch with that person, of not looking at their social media and so on. And the first 2 weeks is going to suck. It's going to suck really badly, and you're going to relapse, and it's going to be really hard for you to stop yourself from going on their social media or from stalking them, or whatever it is that you were doing, whatever behaviors you had, even if it is fantasizing about them every time you go to sleep or something like that. But in order to heal, in order to get better, you really need to allow yourself to feel this pain. And eventually, eventually, like maybe 2 weeks in, you're gonna kind of see the sun coming up a little bit. You're gonna start to feel a little bit better. You're gonna start to recognize that you can enjoy other things in life, because the other aspect of addiction, love addiction or otherwise, is the fact that the world feels very dull when we are not getting that stimulus. Whether it is cocaine or love or pornography, whatever it is, the world feels really boring when we're not getting that hit, because we've trained our dopamine system, our brain, the part of our brain that keeps producing us this motivation hormone that pushes us forward. We've trained it that only with that particular stimulus, whether it is chemical or emotional, we will be experiencing happiness. And the fact that we can't get it anymore, it really dips us very, very deep into pain. So being in that pain, accepting that, and actually knowing that whatever relief you might get temporarily from thinking of that person, or from seeing what they've been up to on social media or whatever other tools you use, you actually recognize, if you start feeling this difference between, you know, not checking in on them, not knowing what's going on. Yes, for 2-3 weeks, you're gonna still wake up every single morning wanting to pick up your phone and see what they're doing. Their very first thought in your mind will still be this person, because this is how obsession and addiction works. But after a while, after a couple of weeks, things are gonna be like, okay, actually, you know, I haven't thought about this person for so long. I haven't been so desperate to be in their presence, so I haven't craved them so much physically and emotionally. And when that happens, you know that you're on a good track. And all you have to do is not relapse. You, even if you feel very bad, find ways of actually distracting yourself from that pain. That doesn't mean that you have to take other drugs. It doesn't mean that you have to eat all the chocolate and the ice creams in the world, although if you choose the healthy options, why not? Ultimately, shift your energy from being constantly focused on fixing that pain by doing things that actually work for you. So a lot of the times, one of the things that you can do is really to do meditations by which you actually release all that energy that keeps you stuck in the past. There are a whole bunch of YouTube videos out there that you can check out in terms of releasing attachments to other person and so on. There are obviously therapy and going to talk to someone about it, ideally not your friends, because if you keep going on and on about this person to your friends, they might one day just get fed up with you and not want to hang out anymore, depending on how good friends we are with you. But essentially, in order that the most fundamental aspect of this is really for you to start reframing that relationship. And reframing it means you need to stop seeing it for the idealized version of the happily ever after, because there is a very good reason why this relationship didn't work. You need to start engaging, you know, the smart part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part that judges and makes evaluations of the world and our place in it. And to start noticing that maybe the beginning of the end didn't start 2 weeks ago when this person decided to dump you or to ghost you, but the signs were already there that you were actually ignoring those red flags, and that ultimately you always knew the relationship wasn't going to be successful, but you persisted in your fantasy that everything will be okay if you keep believing. So the third aspect that you can do is really to start thinking about what you can learn from this experience. What would you not do again if you were giving a second chance? Because of course the end of a relationship is not just on the one side. It's really a combination of several things that are happening in your mind. So really working on what worked for you and remembering those behaviors, and at the same time understanding what wasn't working in that relationship is really a very fundamental part of moving forward. So I am just reading one of the comments, a reward pathway. Yeah, definitely it is about the reward pathway where dopamine and adrenaline work together to actually create this stress response, which is really why we're feeling bad, Prolactin is something that happens when we get what we want, right? When we get satisfaction, it is the satiation hormone, but not necessarily present, I would say, in the breakup question. Ultimately, it really depends on how good we are at dealing with the stress caused by the separation with the other person, and then looking at how can we rewire our brain, if you like, towards a new reward pathway. So instead of constantly seeking the hit that we receive from seeing this person's picture, or connecting with them by, I don't know, sending them a text and them responding to us because we're angry and we're shouting at them, I think the real work that needs to happen for us to get over a person is very much related to how can we rewire our brain towards understanding that life is not just about this person, that happiness does not purely reside in us getting this person back. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've had clients who come to me and say, I want you to help me get this person back. Well, I can't really, I do have a magic wand, that is true, but my magic wand works quite differently. Thank you so much, Moritz, for your comments. Definitely, I'm fascinated by this stuff, and I love kind of looking at this whole story of how neuroscience and emotions work together. But really, coming back to what we can do to reframe this whole pathways, the reward pathways in our brain, is really to start becoming more independent in the way that we find happiness in other ways. Essentially, not being so caught up in the sadness of the story that we tell ourselves, the story that, oh, this person didn't choose me, I feel rejected, I feel left out, which means that I'm in constant pain. Yeah, we need to live through that pain. Hiding that pain and trying to do everything to take action to get the other person back is not going to help us. But what we can do is move forward towards the next partner and really learn the lesson from this experience. So yes, we do need to engage our brain. I know a lot of people tell me that sometimes it feels like I take the magic from love. Well, I actually believe that the magic is not just in our heart, but it's very much in our perception of what love will be. And ultimately, love is just a chemical reaction in our brain. It's an attachment that we make to someone, an association, nothing else. We look at a person and yes, we feel something, the hormones, the pheromones are responding in our body. But from the sexual attraction of, oh, this is a good mating partner, to believing that a person is the love of my life, we do have to involve those the frontal lobes of our mind, because although there is attachment in the animal kingdom, the meaning that we make of love is very much something that humans have created, and the meaning really comes from all these programs that we have been exposed to, I suppose, that tell us that love is happily ever after, that will mean that you are chosen forever, and that the meaning of your life is really about other people choosing you. So there's a whole conversation about the sense of worth and value that comes in. And yes, it is definitely, I'm fascinated by neuroscience and the whole play of dopamine and cortisol and all of these sex hormones and everything. So I might do a lot of topics around that in another conversation. But for now, I hope that what I've shared has been useful, and you are able to really understand that in order for you to get over an ex, to stop thinking, you need to stop and redirect, if you like, the obsession of making yourself feel better temporarily by looking at the other person's life. Ultimately, they are gone. They are not coming back. And honestly, if they've gone and they're coming back, you really need to consider, what are you doing that you're taking them back for? What is the benefit that you're getting? So ultimately, really think about, what is the lesson in this experience? How can I learn something about myself, and how can I become stronger? How can I literally engage my brain plasticity to create a new reality for myself? Because The only reason you're not letting go of that person is because you believe that this bittersweet pain of occasionally chasing them, and the fantasy that they might come back at one point in the future, that they might regret losing you, that they might be missing you as much as you do, is really just a fantasy. It's really our imagination trying to make ourselves feel better because we felt rejected. So instead of letting one person have so much power over you, block that thought. Block and consciously redirect the satisfaction or the compensation for that pain that you're feeling into a different direction. Go and work out, or do something else that feels pleasurable and feels good for you, instead of craving this contact with the other person, which ultimately is literally like reinfecting yourself. I always tell my clients that contact in a breakup situation is literally like having a wound that you, like a cut on your skin that you constantly scratch. And when you're scratching that, you're essentially stopping yourself from healing, because there's no healing possible. There's new toxicity that keeps going in. So I hope that you enjoyed this whole conversation. Thank you, Moritz, so much, and everybody else for all your beautiful comments. And yeah, definitely I'll be talking more about the pathway of pleasure and pain. I'm going to also bring this into the whole sex and sexual attachment and chemistry conversation in the next few weeks. And if you do have any other questions, and if you other comments, and if you really want to contribute, or even want to be invited on my lives, I would absolutely love to have these conversations with you all live in person. So thank you all. I really appreciate you watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next week on Facebook, and probably I'm gonna start posting on all the other social media platforms. So thank you, everyone. Goodbye from the Queen. Have a good evening. Take care.